Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So it's no secret that this weekend was absolutely horrendous for the New Jersey Devils. They went 0-2 against just a straight-up bad Anaheim Ducks team, as well as getting blown out 5-1 today to the LA Kings, putting them now 7 points back at the Philadelphia Flyers with only one game in hand for the final Metro Division spot with only 21 games for the New Jersey Devils remaining. They basically would have to go 15-6, like at the bare minimum, and even then the Flyers could still potentially have a winning record and make it over them. So it is looking very unlikely. So at this point, you basically have to turn to next season if you're a New Jersey Devils fan, because even if they sneak in, they probably lose to the Rangers or the Florida Panthers, if we're being honest. So we are going to look at how I would potentially fix the New Jersey Devils, because I don't think that this is a total overhaul is needed. This team had 112 points last year, still has a very young core, still has a very good cap structure overall with their franchise. So just some obvious tweaks, some obviously changes need to be made. And I think this team could easily be a playoff team yet again. So I'm going to run through those right now. Again, I'm not going to be saying trade Jack Hughes, trade Timo Meier in the first year of an extension. This is all realistic. This is not, I'm not turning water into wine with this. These are very realistic options and what I think could lead to the New Jersey Devils making the playoffs yet again. Up first, regarding this season, I think you need to trade Tyler Toffoli. Again, as I mentioned before, you're probably not making the playoffs unless you go 2-0 in your games Tuesday and Thursday this week and convincingly win and convincingly show Tom Fitzgerald that you actually mean business. The Devils right now are 3-6 in their last 9, so they're trending in the wrong way. You need to sell at the deadline, and obviously Tyler Toffoli is their number one asset, only making $4.5 million this season, $4.5 million cap hit. So I think you should easily be able to get a first-round pick for him, considering that's what the Winnipeg Jets got for Sean Monahan. Sean Monahan had a lower cap hit at 50% retained. Toffoli would still be more than Monahan, but I think we can all agree Tyler Toffoli is the better player than Sean Monahan, having another very solid season on top of last year having 73 goddamn points. So Tyler Toffoli should net you at the bare minimum a first-round pick, probably a first-round pick in a conditional third, conditional second, maybe a low-end prospect. So you end up trading Tyler Toffoli. Yes, it does stink, but you only gave up Igor Sharangovich is playing well, but I still don't think that he's this absolute superstar. You give up a third-round pick in Sharangovich. If you end up getting a first-round pick back, maybe you slightly lose that trade because Sharangovich is a solid second liner at this point, but it's not the end of the world. You still get a first round pick, and we're going to use that first round pick later to solve another problem with this team. When looking at the next move, as soon as the regular season ends, you got to fire Lindy Ruff. I understand at this point you're probably not going to fire him at game number 62 of the goddamn season, but come the end of the season, you need to fire him. You did sign him to an extension literally like the first week of the season for some reason, but you're the New Jersey Devils. If you're a serious NHL organization, after having all these massive expectations this season, to come so short of your expectations is simply unacceptable. And especially for a veteran coach like Lindy Ruff that has been around the block, they should have been much better. Obviously, the goaltending was the number one problem with this team. Lindy Ruff can't do a ton regarding that, and we're going to get to the goaltending later. But even just looking at the basic offensive stats and overall defensive system stats regarding the New Jersey Devils, they did take a step back this season, despite, again, adding a Tyler Toffoli and having a full season of Timo Meier. Obviously didn't utilize Timo Meier that well, but the New Jersey Devils last year were 4th in the entire NHL in goals per game. This year, still very good, 6th. The penalty kill is 15th in the NHL. Compared to last year, it was 4th in the NHL, so obviously that is coaching, that is structure. Their 5-on-5 expected goals percentage is still good. It's still 53%, but you compare that to last year when it was 56%, which was 3rd in the entire NHL. They were just an utterly dominant team. And when it comes to defensive high danger chances, they are 11th in the entire NHL in allowing high danger chances, which doesn't sound horrible, but when you realize last year they were 31st in the entire NHL, only behind the Carolina Hurricanes, who are consistently the best defensive team in the entire NHL. Yeah, that's a pretty big drop off. They're allowing far more high danger chances, whether it's odd man rushes, whether it's not covering right in front of the net. Clearly, the defensive system has taken a step back, and although they did lose Dougie Hamilton is not known for his goddamn defensive play by any stretch of the means. Guys like Siegenthaler, guys like Marino are just not looking the same in this Lindy Ruff system this year. It just has been a massive step back. And also, speaking of in the defensive zone, they're 5th in the entire NHL in defensive zone giveaways compared to last year, 19th. So clearly there is a problem. There's breakdowns in their defensive zones, and Lindy Ruff has not been able to solve them this season. And as a result, although the goaltending has just been straight up bad, it's not helped by Lindy Ruff's defensive system, just overall allowing all these high danger chances, not being able to clear the puck in their own zone. The goalies are getting far more action in terms of shots on net this season, and as a result, they are letting up more. So for Lindy Ruff, great one season. That great one season 2 seasons ago, they weren't good. This season, they're not very good relative to expectations. It's time to move on. It's time to get more of a new age coach that can relate to the player, although the players do like Lindy Ruff, but can relate to the players more so. A better defensive system, obviously, input, and more modern styles of hockey. I think with this Devils team that is so fast, so quick, I think there is a better style of hockey out there. Andrew Brunette probably would have been a better head coach, but I understand you're probably not going to let Lindy Ruff go after he was a goddamn Jack Adams finalist. But looking back on it, I said it then, like, Andrew Brunette was a future stud head coach. Nashville Predators are in the playoffs. Meanwhile, the Devils are not. Even the Nashville Predators have half of the talent that the goddamn New Jersey Devils have. But that's beyond that. When looking at it, I think potentially getting a new head coach, or you need to get a new head coach, no matter what. Get a younger guy, change up the overall locker room. Lindy has lost their locker room for the most part. When they needed a great stretch down the stretch, they're 3-6, as I mentioned before. That is horrible considering they're losing games to the goddamn Anaheim Ducks, teams that they should not be losing to. So it's time to move on from Lindy Ruff. Next up, the goaltenders. I obviously made this graphic if you follow me on Instagram today. I think you need to go off after one of these top 4 guys that are trade options. The bottom 4, they're nice 1Bs, maybe 1As, maybe. But I think if you're actually serious about being a contender next year, you need to pay serious capital at this point, because when you look at the New Jersey Devils this season, they have an .892 save percentage on the whole for the team from guys like Vanacek, Schmid. Nico Dawson has actually been better than the two of them. So when looking at it, that's second worst in the entire NHL, tied with Tampa Bay, actually, and only behind the Ottawa Senators, who somehow have an .885. When looking at this New Jersey Devils team, if they even had 900 save percentage right now, which is 21st in the entire NHL, that's still below average. I think we agree they probably have 5, 6, 7 more points and are either in that final playoff spot ahead of the Philadelphia Flyers, or at the very least battling with them, and with a Philly team that's probably going to sell heavy at the deadline, probably would have the inside edge in terms of making the playoffs. The goaltending has been such a clear, massive failure, and especially of late in their 3-6 stretch, they're letting in like 3, 4, 5, 6 goals every single game for the most part. I think you need to go out and get one of these top 4 guys. I don't love Gibson and Markstrom as options, considering they have a lot of term left and are kind of, Markstrom's very inconsistent. Gibson hasn't really been that good for the Anaheim Ducks, but I still think anything is an upgrade. And when looking at this team, now that Nico Daws played okay, but I wouldn't say he's a future starter. Akira Schmid has been extremely disappointing. You thought at the end of last year, he had a .920 in like 9 regular season games, looked amazing against the goddamn Rangers. He's stalled out. He's not even playing that good in Utica right now for the AHL team. So I think you need to seriously address the goaltending. And with that first round pick, as mentioned, from a potential Tyler Toffoli trade, you're not giving up maybe your own assets. When you go out and trade for a UC Soros, you give up a first and Alexander Holtz or something like that. I think Holtz would have to be on the table. I'm not sure what an Olmark trade would look like, considering the Boston Bruins would need like serious impact players. I'm not sure that's a good fit. You're not going to give up John Marino, Siegenthaler. Actually, maybe you actually could, but you're not going to give up like serious pieces in terms of now, because you want to improve your team in order to get that goaltender and Linus Olmark. So I think a Saros deal or a Markstrom deal or a Gibson deal, where you just have to give up mainly picks and prospects, probably is the best way to go. And honestly, maybe you just straight up sign one of these also guys in order to be your 1B. And when trading for one of these starting guys, I think you would have to somehow attach Vanacek in that kind of deal just to get his $3.4 million cap hit off the books. If that takes an extra second or third round pick, I think it is worth it in order to have that cap flexibility to bring in potential free agents that I'm going to talk about later. Your one key restricted free agent is obviously Dawson Mercer. And I don't want to say it's a good thing that he struggled this year, but he does only have 27 points in 60 games. It's not a good thing because obviously if he played better, if he really broke out and had 45, 50 points, then he'd probably be higher in the standings. But now when looking at it, you're not going to have to pay him that much on the open market. He had 57 points last year, looked like an absolute stud, had a rough start, then was playing pretty good, now has kind of cooled off yet again. So at 27 points in 60 games, RFA, I only think you have to give him like 2 or 3 years at $3.5 million. You can't really bridge him long-term considering he has been up and down. And honestly, like, you're trying to win now. You're trying to keep that cap hit low for a guy like Dawson Mercer. So I think you get him signed 3 years, $3.5 million. I think he's going to be well worth that. He doesn't have a ton of leverage, so I think he would take something like that, and you kind of save money when it comes to that. In terms of defense, their defense, you can't really make any massive upgrades when looking at this, because obviously Dougie Hamilton is coming back next season. So all 5 of the guys besides Connor Miller are under contract. So your defense score is kind of set in stone. I don't really see an avenue to kind of upgrade it, considering Nemec and Hughes are your future franchise guys. You're not going to go out and get a legit number 2 for Dougie Hamilton next season. I think Nemec is going to be like a top 75, and Hughes could be top 75 defenseman in the entire NHL as soon as next year. When it comes to the forward core, with some of the money that you could potentially save by shipping out Vanacek, not getting Mercer for cheaper than you expected. I think bringing in terms of the bottom 6, which you're looking at right now, I think bringing in veteran guys like a Corey Perry, a Tyler Johnson, Kyle Okposo, Sam Lafferty, not all of them obviously, but 1 or 2 of them, Andrew Cogliano, maybe even Thomas Tatar, considering he was very good for the Devils last year. You bring in some veteran guys in order to round up your bottom 6. Obviously, you're not making any massive top 6 additions, considering the top 6 will kind of work itself out in terms of producing at a high level. Only really Timo Meier in that top 6 has not really looked that good this season in terms of their elite guys. So when looking at it, I think the New Jersey Devils, you got to trade Toffoli at the deadline this year. Fire Lindy, Ruff, obviously, after the team has taken a step back and just looks lifeless of late when they're in a playoff hunt. Goalies, go for one of the big 4. Again, I don't love Gibson and Markstrom, but it's such an upgrade over the guys you currently have that you need to take that risk because this team can be highly competitive. Resign Dawson Mercer for cheap, under $4 million, given his lackluster play this year for the most part. The defense core, largely untouched. Seamus Casey maybe can be a nice add here, considering he's killing it at the college hockey level. And then just bring in veterans to overall boost your toughness and leadership in the room in terms of having guys that have been there and done that deep in the playoffs. I think that's what you do for the New Jersey Devils. It's not massive. It's not really that hard of an ask besides maybe the goalie situation. And even if they don't figure out the goalie situation, I think Schmidt and Vanacek will play better next year. Not by a massive margin. They're not going to be Vezina caliber all of a sudden. But I think this New Jersey Devils team will be more locked in next year, assuming Dougie Hamilton's healthy. That's a massive thing. 60 games without your number 1 defenseman. But I think the New Jersey Devils from within will be an improved team. And if they follow these steps, I don't see why they could not be a 100-plus point team yet again in a Metro division that is getting up there in age, an overall Eastern Conference that's getting up there in age. They're still one of the youngest teams. They still have one of the brightest futures in the entire NHL. This isn't absolute doomsday like a team that is in their late 20s that missed the playoffs in a given year. No, most of your players are still pretty young, on pretty good contracts. It's going to be a little bit of a struggle once Luke Hughes and Nemec need contracts. We deal with that next offseason. Luke Hughes is up. But right now, next season, you go out, you get a goal, and I think this team can be highly competitive in an Eastern Conference that I honestly think the Western Conference is harder at this time. So an Eastern Conference that is going to be pretty wide open next season, besides maybe the Florida Panthers, who have looked fantastic. But that's my thoughts. That's how I'd fix the New Jersey Devils for next season. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Let me know in the comments, what do you think?